We just got some absolutely breaking news in regards to Calvin Ridley, in which he did something that I am absolutely shocked about that could absolutely ruin the rest of his career. Before we get to the content, we're giving away $500 to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. We're giving away another $500 on Instagram to one of our followers. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? A couple of days ago, I released a video. Actually, this was the last video I released where I mentioned all of the stars in the NFL that could potentially be traded. One of those individuals was none other than Calvin Ridley. Now, Calvin Ridley was in a very unique predicament over the past year. After absolutely dominating for the Atlanta Falcons in the 2020 season, in a season where he had 1,374 receiving yards to go with 9 touchdowns, this is a man that's had a pretty stellar career so far. This past year, unfortunately, things were not as sweet, where Calvin Ridley cited that he needed to step away from football to focus on his own mental health. These past few weeks have been very challenging, and as much as I'd like to be on the football field competing with my teammates, I need to step away from football at this time and focus on my mental well-being. This will help me be the best version of myself now and in the future. I want to thank my teammates, the entire Atlanta Falcons organization, our great fans, my friends, and my family for all of their support during this time. This was in October, bear in mind. Ultimately, whether this was legitimate or not is something that I do not like to debate on this channel, because you never know what someone is going through in their personal life. But this has been something that Calvin Ridley was dealing with multiple times throughout the year. It was the second time that he was out with that designation. The first time he took a mental health break, then he came back, he played a couple of games, then he's decided that he was going to be out for the entire year. Now, ultimately, the Atlanta Falcons were rumored to try to trade Calvin Ridley over this offseason, but today we got an absolute bombshell from the NFL in regards to Calvin Ridley being suspended for betting on NFL games in the 2021 season. And what's even more wild about this report is Adam Schefter even says that multiple NFL teams reached out to the Atlanta Falcons in recent weeks to inquire about trading for Calvin Ridley, and each time Atlanta declined to enter into any talks out of good faith, knowing the issues in store for their standout wide receiver per sources. So the Atlanta Falcons knew that this was coming, as you're going to see in this report really soon. This is apparently an investigation that has been launched over the past month and has been kept under wraps until they were able to officially prove that Calvin Ridley is guilty of this crime. So here's what the official statement says. Falcons Calvin Ridley suspended through at least the 2022 season for betting on NFL games in the 2021 season. Bear in mind, they said at least over here, so this could be longer than just a year. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell today suspended Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons indefinitely through at least the conclusion of the 2022 season for betting on NFL games in the 2021 season. The activity took place during a 5-day period in late November 2021, while Ridley was not with the team and was away from the club's facility on the non-football illness list. A league investigation uncovered no evidence indicating any inside information was used or that any game was compromised in any way, nor was there evidence suggesting any awareness by coaches, staff, teammates, or other players of his betting activity. So this is very interesting because unlike Pete Rose or unlike Tim Donaghy, Calvin Ridley was not involved in the games. He had no way of influencing the games one way or another. Now, this statement is in direct contrast of what Mikerophone says, because Mikerophone says that a source informed of the NFL's investigation into Calvin Ridley's gambling tells me that the bets did involve the Atlanta Falcons, even though the NFL statement says that the investigation, quote unquote, uncovered no evidence indicating that any inside information was used or that any game was compromised in any way, which means that there is a possibility that the NFL is trying to cover its tracks here and games could have potentially been tampered with. Commissioner Goodell wrote a letter to Calvin Ridley notifying him of his suspension and saying there is nothing more fundamental to the NFL's success and to the reputation of everyone associated with our league than upholding the integrity of the game. This is the responsibility of every player, coach, owner, game official, and anyone else employed in the league. Your actions put the integrity of the game at risk, threaten to damage public confidence in professional football, and potentially undermine the reputations of your fellow players throughout the NFL. For decades, gambling on NFL games has been considered amongst the most significant violations of league policy, warranting the most substantial sanction. In your case, I acknowledge and commend you for your promptly reporting for an interview and for admitting your actions. Calvin Ridley may petition for reinstatement on or after February 15th, 2023, pursuant to the NFL and NFLPA collective bargaining agreement. He may appeal his suspension by filing notice within 3 days. Now, I took my sweet time before making this video because I wanted to make sure that I got all the facts, because Calvin Ridley eventually would go on and give his statement on the situation. So I wanted to give a huge shout out to everyone that tagged me on Instagram and Twitter to make sure that I got all the information that I need and the full story on the matter. Calvin Ridley yesterday tweeted out, "I learned from my L's." Now, I don't know whether this was a reference to his situation or not, because clearly he must have known that this was coming if there was an investigation. But more recently, he tweeted out that I bet $1,500 total. I don't have a gambling problem. I couldn't even watch football at that point. I'm just going to be more healthy when I come back. So the story that I'm getting from Calvin Ridley is the fact that, and believe me, this has happened to me with another sport, not necessarily football, and this does happen from time to time, unfortunately, where he was just getting sick of the sport. And I could respect that, and he was trying to find an additional way to remain invested in the game or something that excited him about the game. And to be honest, not to promote gambling to my viewers, if you are in the industry or if you are in the business of doing some sort of sport, and the sport just hasn't been hitting you as well recently, I could understand trying to place a bet in order to get yourself more invested in a particular game. That's the purpose of gambling, in my opinion, although obviously gamble responsibly. Now, we actually got information on the type of bet that was placed. According to Adam Schefter, the NFL determined that Calvin Ridley placed multi-legged parlay bets involving 3, 5, and 8 games that included the Falcons to win, per source. Investigation determined that there was no involvement from any team, players, coach, etc., placed via his mobile device out of state. So this is what's interesting, because nothing against gamblers, nothing against people that bet parlays. Parlays are easily the lowest probability bet that you can place. More often than not, you're not going to cash out on a parlay, and the marketing that goes into these parlay bets is they'll take out a parlay ticket and they'll tweet out a winning ticket and they'll say something like, "Oh, gee willikers, this man bet $50 and won $15,000 as a result of this insane bet that happened to cash in." So the fact that this was a parlay bet and he's getting hit this hard for doing this is kind of weird to me. I mean, obviously $1,500 is a lot of money, but when you compare it to the amount of money that Calvin Ridley is making, I could see it not being very much, to be honest. Ultimately, this is the story that I am at least getting. Calvin Ridley took some time away from football because he was losing his love for the game. That could have potentially been as a result of being on a losing team, or it could have been just due to his own neurochemistry or personal issues that he's dealing with as well. Needless to say, he was losing love for the game. As a result, in order to get his love for the game back, he placed a couple of multi-legged parlay bets in order to just make it a little bit more exciting for him to watch the games at home. Ultimately, this is a big no-no, and as a result, he's been banned for an entire year. It's a very interesting situation at that. Obviously, if you're in sports, you shouldn't bet on games, and maybe you should find a different way to become invested in these games, but regardless, that's the story that at least I'm getting from this thus far. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this, man. Obviously, it's a very unique story as well. I hope if Calvin is still dealing with mental health problems, he gets the help he needs and he feels better by this time next year or when he's allowed to come back. Hopefully he learned his lesson on this situation and doesn't gamble on more games once he is suspended for the year. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.